Hi, I'm Jessie Heron, host of Rediscover Your Story, a podcast for marketers who need a break from everyday learning but still want to hear from like-minded professionals on all things creative. Today, we have an awesome guest. He's the host of the Mental Game podcast, local sports journalist turned podcaster, Brandon Saho. But first, if you're loving Rediscover Your Story, go ahead and smash that bell and subscribe on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and wherever you can get your streaming content. And hey, if you're interested in who we are at Resolve, we're a video content agency, and we can help you create your video content marketing just like we're doing with the podcast. Please follow along at our website, resolve.com. That's RESLV.com. Subscribe to our newsletter and never hesitate to reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We can't wait to hear from you. And without further ado, let's rediscover his story. Brandon, okay, as mentioned when we were talking, you're a hard guy to get a hold of, but I think, I want to say that because I think it helps to lean into the fact that you're hustling, you're out there, you're running your own podcast, the Mental Game podcast. You're bringing on A-listers, you're bringing on people like Terry Crews. I mean, it's just such a wild ride, right?
It is crazy. And it's just about a year of me doing the podcast, and I don't think I'm that hard to get a hold of. I just have a lot of people. The DM route is really tough.
He's like, Jesse, you're calling my shit out. Stop that.
Yeah, I know. Right off the top, you're really hard to get a hold of.
Yeah.
If you want me to come on the show or you want to do an event together, email is the best way to do it because texts or DMs just get lost. But life is crazy right now, but that's good because that means things are happening.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure out this new path. It is just wild to look back at where I was about a year and a half ago to now. It's like two completely different people.
I wasn't saying it negatively, so let me rewind. It's a positive thing in the sense that you're so busy. You have so many, like I said, you have so much great content that you're producing. And the reason I found out about you is because we've started our own podcast here at Resolve. And I think the algorithms were just doing their thing.
Good.
Yep.
So woohoo.
Marketing works. And your particular podcast popped up in my newsfeed on Instagram. And then I started listening and just thinking like, oh shit, this guy's local. He talks about mental health, which is something super important to me. And, I just find it so interesting to hear from the people that you're interviewing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you for saying that. It is really cool to be able to have these conversations. I mean, before we sat down, I literally pressed send on an episode with rapper Kevin Gates. My last 2 weeks have been Terry Crews and Kevin Gates. It's really wild to think about. But what has been cool is that, and I'm sure you experience this with your podcast, is that when people are genuine and want to tell their story, it is therapeutic. It's amazing to have that type of conversation and connection, and it can help people that listen, no matter if they're a fan of Terry Crews, Kevin Gates, me, you, they can learn or take something away from every episode, which is what my goal is whenever I do a show.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, our podcast is called Rediscover Your Story because I want to dive into people's stories. I mean, we are content creators, storytellers here at Resolve, but personally, I just love I'm that kid that was always like, why or how, or keep telling me. And I'm also just a pretty big connector and networker. So I just love knowing things about people so I can help create connections. So let's start, not at the beginning. I don't need to know when you were born.
I was born on August 18th, 1993 at 7:15 a.m. at Christ Hospital in Cincinnati from my mother, Debbie Saho. Is that good?
That's good. That's good. But, kind of tell me, what really led you into, the Mental Game podcast and why you're so passionate about mental health. Should I start it like you start yours? What do you think?
What is mental health?
What is mental health and what does it mean to you?
I've never thought about the answer to that question because I'm always the one asking it.
Yeah.
And like I say a lot, it's a tough question to answer because it is unique to each person. But for me, mental health is everything because if you don't have mental health, you don't have anything. If you trip and break your arm, you're going to the doctor to get a cast, get surgery to get that fixed. You should do the same thing with your mental health. So for me, it's something that you have to take care of every single day. The advice that I give with mental health, and I'm not a therapist or a doctor, I've just lived through some really tough moments with depression and suicidal thoughts. Number one, do something, call your mom, call your friend, call your therapist.
Yep.
And number two, feelings are temporary. Like, it's so hard in these tough moments in life when you're sad, depressed, angry, mad. You'd think you're never going to get out of that moment in your life, but those feelings really are temporary. And I never would have believed that a year and a half ago when I was going through, definitely the toughest shit of my life. But look where I'm able to be at now. I'm sure you've had difficult moments in your life that you never thought you were going to get out of, but as soon as you reached out for help or tried to figure it out on your own a little bit too, you're able to find that happiness and to be able to find a new passion, rediscover your story.
Yep, right.
It's really cool when you take control of what you can control, and that's how you treat yourself and your mental health.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I listened to the episode that you had with your mom, with Debbie, and when you guys were talking about, because your mom had, anxiety and things going on as well, but is it something where it's like hereditary? I mean, that's something that my family talks about all the time. The reason I have the tattoo that I have is more for my brother. So, not to totally air his shit, but he talks about it too, is that, he last October, actually, he went through something that you don't want to even wish on your worst enemy, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're in it and when you're having the panic attacks or the suicidal thoughts or the can't get out of bed, he's a dad, he's a husband, he's a son, it is so important to know that like it can just happen to anybody.
Yep.
I mean, this is the guy that in high school, he was basically a Walmart greeter. He greeted everybody coming into the classroom. You know what I mean? He's always jovial, the life of the party. Everybody loves my brother and just connects with my brother instantly. And to see him in such a fragile, vulnerable state, it's just really, really hard. But we all kind of have anxiety in our family. So we all just were like, we know a slice of what he's going through, not the full piece.
Right.
Did you feel the same?
I felt the same, yeah. And for me, it happened I've battled suicidal thoughts and depression since I was 14. Wow. Didn't reach out, ask for help until 2020 when the world shut down.
Sure.
And that's, a lot of people were faced to finally face and battle their own mental health and do something about it when your job changed, the world changed, sports shut down for me, which was my job, which was huge. But yeah, I felt like I did hide it for a long, long time. And I think subconsciously there was the stigma around it, but I don't know. I just was always this sad, emotional kid, which my mom and I had talked about on that episode.
Yeah.
But you talk about faking it and being the person that's always smiling and having a good time. My worst moment personally happened during the best moment for me professionally, where the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl. I'm on the sidelines at all these games, smiling, having the time of my life. And I was enjoying it. It was incredible interviewing Joe and Jamar and Coach Taylor on the field. And this is an amazing thing professionally, but personally, I was going through hell. I had 3 family members that I was really close to pass in 3 months, including my cousin Ben, who was 32, had a heart attack before the Bengals Titans playoff game in Nashville. The day before, he was supposed to be there and watch the game, and then I'm sure we would have hung out and gone out afterwards and celebrated the
32,
win.
32, way too young.
Yeah, and that was heartbreaking. Then at the same time, woman that I thought I was going to marry, her and I are going through a really toxic, relationship and breakup and all that at once.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And so I was suicidal for 3-4 months. It was really, really tough on my mental health, and I didn't take care of it. I was still going to therapy, but outside of that hour every 2 weeks, I really wasn't doing anything good for it. And I was so busy with work. I was loving it, and I loved my job, and what was happening with the Bengals was a dream come true for a Cincinnati kid.
Oh, for sure. My kids don't even understand.
No, they have no idea.
They have no idea.
Yeah, I waited 30 years for this moment.
Yeah.
And it's it's crazy to look back because I was so miserable.
Have you actually looked at pictures of yourself or looked at video of yourself from that day?
Yeah, what's crazy is that people always point out when I post reels or pictures, they started, I had something go viral probably about 8 months ago where I kind of told my mental health story, and I had pictures from then and now. And people always point out that you can see it in your eyes.
Yeah.
And I like never noticed that until other people pointed out. I did notice like, I was a little bit heavier and like the face was bigger and things like that. Or obviously like I'm drunk in a lot of pictures. So you can tell in the eyes there. But when people noticed that, I was like, wow, I've never thought about it like that. And now when I see other people post stuff, I notice it in them.
Yeah, I never thought about that with the eyes, but that's something to definitely go back and kind of like look at.
Yeah, it's just weird that was a thing. But I mean, it was true. And I can think about like, like the Bengals winning in Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, punching their ticket to the Super Bowl. Evan McPherson makes the field goal. I run from the press box to the elevator. I'm on the elevator with the Bengals coaches going down, running through the tunnel to get on the field. Travis Kelce's walking past me.
Was it hard to not flip him off? Sorry.
No, I did not. I love Travis because I'm a UC guy. So I love Travis Kelce. Obviously, I want the Bengals to beat him, but we're running past him. No, it was kind of weird that he was walking past me, but that's the same tunnel where you see Taylor Swift and him walk now.
Yeah.
But I'm walking onto the field. And like I'm interviewing Jamar after his rookie season, going to the Super Bowl. Zach Taylor is giving me a hug at the 50-yard line, like I did something to help them win the game, which him and I laughed about when I had him on my show. And it was just an incredible 5 hours, dream come true. Yep. And then we're like partying at bars afterwards, and I remember being really drunk and like celebrating, but also still that like sadness about what I'm going through with my own suicidal thoughts and arguing with my ex on the phone or through text and thinking about like what I just been through with my family and how like Ben would want to see them going to the Super Bowl. Yeah. There was you just never know what somebody's going through. And people fake it for so long. And I'm so thankful now that one, I had the self-awareness to ask for help and that I had tools and resources and people around me to help me, but also that the stigma is changing where it is way more common and accepted now to be vulnerable and ask for help than it was, especially 15, 20 years ago, but even 5 years ago.
Right. Well, I think to your point, the stigma, right? Like if again, I only know my own story, so that's why I refer to it. But if I think about even my parents and sort of this thought process around, mental health. And then you see my brother go through it. Yeah. And I've never seen my parents rally behind someone so much that needed it. And it well-deserved, right? Like my mom got her first tattoo. We all got these tattoos together that I have.
That's really cool.
So my mom got her first tattoo. My dad got his first tattoo. I mean, it was just kind of everybody doing it together to show their support. Mm-hmm. But again, to your point, like the conversation around mental health, thankfully has progressed and changed.
Yeah.
But how do you feel like it is? I mean, do you think there's a lot more work to be done? And
I mean, I think there is, but it's also like, I remember never talking about mental health at all. I'm not that old. I just turned 30, but I graduated high school in 2011 from LaSalle and UC in 2015. I heard zero about mental health ever in school. And so now when I go back and I'm like speaking at schools or colleges or different bigger events, it's really inspiring and it makes me hopeful that like we are talking about this now, but like it should have been taught along with math, science, English. I took a class called Life Skills in high school. Yeah. Never heard about mental health. I learned how to balance a checkbook. We don't use that anymore.
No, we don't.
Learned how to tie a tie, but I learned that off of YouTube because I needed to go to a dance. Some girl at I think it was Mercy asked me to go as a sophomore.
Yeah, there you go.
I was pumped.
There you go.
So I had to learn how to tie a tie at 15. But we have to, like, that's the thing I look back at when I was in the mental health hospital is that you had people from every background, every age, every race.
Yes.
But we all had something in common, and it was that we were suicidal or we were depressed and we felt alone. And the work that, places like the Linder Center of Hope, therapists, mental health professionals do is absolutely amazing. It saves lives. And I'm not trying to discredit what they do.
Sure.
But a lot of what you learn isn't rocket science. It's just we're never taught it, and our parents weren't taught it, and their parents weren't taught it. It's literally changing like the way the world thinks about mental health. And it's a big task, but it is cool to see how it's changed. I think it is getting a lot better.
I think so too. I think the conversations alone are what makes it progress so much faster and so much better. And I think too, like, when you think about even the way that our parents worked versus the way that we work, I mean, does your mom say like, what the hell do you do all day? I don't understand your job, right? Like,
I feel like creatives in general, people don't understand, but I also don't know how like my dad was like a very successful financial guy and I have no idea what he did day to day.
Sure.
I knew he like had meetings and flew all over the country and handled a lot of money for these big companies.
Yeah.
But I don't understand it. So I'm sure it's the same way. Like it is funny. So like I'm trying to explain to my parents how I make money now, which I really like don't. But it's going, one day.
The hotline number is going to be scrolling on the bottom of the screen to make donations to Brandon's podcast.
Well, you know what's funny about
Can we make that work, please, Steve?
Yeah, we can get into this, but like people didn't know until I think I had an interview with the Cincinnati Enquirer like 2 months ago. I like was driving Uber for months while I was doing this.
Yeah.
And like I'd be sitting down with a celebrity and like having these interviews and people watch it. And then I'm not like, obviously Joe Burrow or whoever, but people in Cincinnati like have watched me on the news or see the show now.
Yeah.
And so I'd like be picking people up. And like, I would say probably 30 to 50% of the time at some point in the ride, they like figure it out and recognize me, like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I just don't drink anymore. And I'm trying to like, just, fill some time and meet people. But cause I was embarrassed by it at first that I was Ubering to support this podcast where I'm interviewing literally like A-list celebrities or NFL players. But people like don't understand that there's not a ton of money in it when you're starting it. Eventually that can change. Yeah. And I'm starting to see it turn the page with partnerships and sponsorships and different speaking engagements and fun things that we can do with the show. But that turned in my head. It was like affecting my own mental health where I was kind of embarrassed by doing it. It was stressful. I mean, I was literally like trying to make $500 or $600 on a weekend so that I could pay for the flights to LA to do these interviews.
Sure.
And I'm doing everything myself, which is crazy, but that's what you have to do when you start your own business. But what was cool is I saw the turn in my own head where people would start opening up to me about their mental health while I was driving them and like telling me how the show has helped them or things they've gone through, like that I've gone through too. And so for me, that made it turn where like I actually started to look forward to Ubering, not because like I'm going to make some money. That obviously is the goal, but it was really cool to connect with people who I normally probably would never meet or connect with.
It's a positive experience that you get to have with them for sure.
Yeah. And for me too, what I've had to change, and I think me being sober helps with this, is people used to come up to me because I was a sports reporter and talk about what Joe Burrow did or what the Reds did or UC or Xavier or FCC. Now people come up and tell me about the worst moment in their life. Yeah. And that's a very, very heavy thing to hear every single day whenever you meet somebody. But that means that like the mental game's working or my story is working where like you want people to talk about that more. And when I was still drinking, like that was, I'd be like in the bathroom at a bar downtown, just peeing. And somebody would like be drunk. Like I remember this kid drunk yelling at me like, Saho, like your story, like your letter, man, that like saved my life. Like it was so awesome. Like I'm like, all right, let me wash my hands and then let's have this conversation.
Finish going to the bathroom?
Yeah. But those conversations, I love having them because it means that they trust me with their story and they want to get help or are getting help. And then them telling their story can help save someone else's life, whether it's someone in their family, their friend group, or just somebody randomly standing next to them in the grocery store they see is having a shitty day. Like one of the things I always say is that talking saves lives. And I truly believe that. It doesn't matter if it's me or Terry Crews or random Joe Smith who works at a factory in Northern Kentucky and is talking about his shitty day and how he finally started going to therapy at a high school football game. Like there's something really, really valuable in talking about your emotions and feelings that can help you and the people around you.
Well, and let's talk about that because that's what your podcast is about, right? Like you get on, you have the Mental Game podcast, you get people on the podcast to talk about what they're going through. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you're picking people, you're going after people who are the A-listers, the C, whatever, the celebrity status, but everybody is telling their story in this more vulnerable state. So you're just kind of connecting people. I mean, tell me a little, lead me into the podcast a little bit. Like, where did the podcast kind of grow out of and how's it going? And
So the podcast is really based off of my personal mental health story. When I went through all of the suicidal thoughts and depression in 2021, after the Bengals lost the Super Bowl, I had like some really, really rough nights because like the distraction from it of like the highlight of my career was gone. And I really had to face the reality of my life is in shambles. And I had so many nights of, drunk, walking home on the Roebling Bridge, sitting there thinking about jumping off. And then I had, a couple days where I thought about laying down in traffic. I had to get picked up one day. I remember being on the phone with my ex, telling her that I was finally going to do it and jump off. And, to her credit, like she stayed on the phone with me until like my cousin came and picked me up, and probably saved my life no matter what I think about that relationship and how things ended.
Sure.
I give her credit for that because that, saved my life. I had another day where I was sober, just crying my eyes out at 10 a.m., wrote a goodbye letter, and then just took a bunch of pills that I had around the house and prayed not to wake up. And then that was like finally the night on the phone with my ex. And then when I woke up from the pills and the goodbye letter, that was finally when I like called my mom and said, hey, I'm not going to be alive if I don't go somewhere, do something. And like, I'll just never forget, I was in my cousin's, in his kitchen with him and his wife and my mom. My dad was on the phone. My parents are split. He lives in Arizona. But I just remember like just being so overwhelmed with emotion, trying to figure out what to do. And, I literally said the same thing. Like, I'm not going to be alive if I don't go do something to help myself.
Right.
I don't know what to do. So I called my therapist the next day. She put in basically a recommendation to get me checked in right away. And so I think it was like I had to wait like basically a week to get checked into the Linder Center of Hope in Cincinnati, which is, a mental health hospital that really does amazing work.
Yep.
And so once I got in there, that was like checking in was like the best, worst day of my life because it was like, I'm getting help. That's amazing. But I'm also like, I remember checking and doing the paperwork, like the onboarding stuff. I just remember collapsing to the floor, like crying because I realized this is where I'm at in life.
Yeah.
Like it sucks. It fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And so took me about 2 or 3 days to open up. And I remember one of the therapists that was leading you're in like a classroom a lot of the time with like 20 people. And she asked, Brandon, why aren't you opening up? And I said, well, I've always just been like really emotional. I've always just been kind of a bitch. And she stopped me and she's like, that's the problem with mental health, specifically men's mental health. There's a stigma of like being emotional, being, a bitch. And that's how I was. And so for some reason that was like I'm going to steal Terry Cruz's analogy that he told me is like, that was kind of like the breaking of the egg moment where like I started to realize, okay, this is part of the problem. How do I fix all this? And, I spent 2 weeks there. It was really emotional. I learned a lot. I wasn't better, but I felt better about some of the tools and where I could go forward. And where the podcast came in is I put out a letter explaining why I wasn't on TV for 2 weeks. And I told them in the letter everything that I just told you about the drunk nights, the suicidal thoughts, the depression, the 3 family members passing, the girlfriend breaking up with me, and that I just couldn't take it anymore. And when I put out that letter on Instagram, Facebook, and everywhere on social media, I got probably 1,500 to 2,000, not like comments, but actually
like heartfelt messages,
emails ranging from people saying, I had no idea to I go to therapy too, all the way up to I probably had 3 to 5 where someone said, hey, I was thinking about suicide. I saw your letter. Now I want to go to therapy or I want to check in. And when I saw that, that's when it clicked for me. If I have like a few people reaching out that I can maybe inspire, help, go get help with their mental health. What if I reach out to the NFL players I know, the NBA guys, reach out to musicians, celebrities? And so I was literally in therapy, talking to my therapist about this. And my contract was coming up. And when you're in TV, you're on contracts, like 2, 3, 4 year contracts.
Got it. Okay.
And so she asked like what I wanted to do. And I'm like, well, what if we combine the passion of mental health and journalism together? And so that's where it was born. I quit my job last August and then launched this November 1 of 2022. So it's about to hit a year tomorrow from when we were recording this, which is crazy, but it was just a really genuine thing. And I did a lot of research. I couldn't find anything out there that like had these types of public figures on. There's podcasts where people come on and talk about their mental health, but where it's the focus, I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like I'm a pretty loyal SmartList listener, which is, you know, Sean Hayes, Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, whatever. They're so fun. Loved them so much that I actually went and saw Sean in New York.
That's awesome.
In his Goodnight Oscar play. Anyway, I digress. But I agree with you. They have tons of celebrities on, tons of people, and it might be a byproduct of the conversation.
Right.
But I feel like your podcast is the only one that I have found where it is the conversation.
Yep.
And I also think from the point that you made earlier about like men talking about mental health, men opening up about the conversation, it's not a widespread idea. Women get together all the time and talk shit about
you guys are pros at that.
We're pros at that. We'll talk all the shit. We'll talk about the kids and the stupid crap they're doing. We'll talk about
stupid stuff men do.
Whatever. We'll talk about all of it, right? But many times us women have said to each other, I wish my husband had a group of people where he could talk openly, freely, transparently, authentically, raw, cry, whatever it needs to be to get to the crux of whatever's going on inside. It does not happen.
It doesn't. And this is not a shot at like my best friends. I've had the same best friends since I was 16, 17 years old. We're still in a group chat today. We went to UC together. And I love them to death, and they've been there for me in my darkest moments. But one of the biggest things that I struggle with, even to this day, is that they are all married.
Sure.
Some of them have kids now. None of them have been in my shoes of the depression, the suicidal thoughts, and like the world that I live in now, you know, the sports reporter, now podcasting. Like my best friends can't relate to me.
Yep.
And so that's a struggle. And I feel like just in general, men feel that, you know, their best friend might not understand why they're upset at their girlfriend or wife, or why they're struggling with the job change or different things going on with their mental health. But the thing is, and I'm ignorant of it too, you think that no one can relate to you and that you're all alone. But the more you talk, the more you open up, you realize people can relate to you. So for me on the creative side, I am able to open up with other people that are in TV or journalism or in the creative spaces I work in, because they understand what it's like to work till 1, 2, 3 in the morning and then have to be at something else at 8 a.m. And then just put on a face like nothing happened. But that can apply to anyone. And so like for men, it's been really powerful to see how that conversation's changed. And I was blind to that stigma until I checked in and was told that by the therapist about being a bitch and like how that's part of the problem. Like I didn't realize that there was this big problem with men's mental health. Then I put out that letter, I get all this feedback. And now when I have these conversations with Terry Crews or Nate Burleson or Jake Fraley from the Reds or Sam Hubbard from the Bengals, like it is a huge thing. And the fact that people are wanting to talk about it more, that like makes me so happy. One, it helps the podcast, but two, it helps people out who are feeling lost, feeling alone, that think that there's something wrong with speaking up or talking about your emotions. Look, I probably would have fit way better in the women's circle of talking about your mental health and whatever you guys do on ladies' nights at home. Like I would have fit in that circle because I've been a bitch my whole life and been super emotional and always get attached to the people that I'm dating, even though it never works. And
oh no,
we don't have to go into all that.
Okay, I was gonna say podcast part 2.
No, we don't have to go into all that. But like for so long, it was taught to like rub dirt on it or just put your head down and go. And like even, and I love my dad to death and he's one of my best friends, but even in some of my toughest moments, he told me that.
Because it's generational too, right?
And I had to, I had to explain to him that like that shit doesn't work. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't just do that. And him and I had conversations and he understood me more and more each time we talked. And like, he got to the point of like being on the exact same page as me and helping me through those moments. And so you have to have uncomfortable conversations sometimes, especially as men, and like break down the barrier and break down the wall so that you can have that transparency and be comfortable being vulnerable.
Yeah. I see it in my dad and my brother. I've never seen them closer than they ever have been. And I mean, there were times where my dad basically had to, quote unquote, babysit my brother, right?
Yeah.
Like he had to just sit with my brother. And luckily my dad had just retired. So poor guy, that's not exactly what he wanted to do in his retirement, but that's what he did.
Let me say this while you say that, because a lot of people struggle to speak up about their mental health and worry about what if, you know, they say something to their family member or to their friend, maybe on behalf of your brother or somebody on your team or somebody at school. They're worried about if that person that you're talking about that you see struggling will be mad at you.
Yes.
Somebody would much rather have that difficult conversation and then be mad at you for a little bit than them not be here.
100%.
So have that conversation, speak up. Like, I promise in the end, they would much rather you have that conversation. Maybe you guys go head to head a little bit than the opposite, which is possibly them not being here.
Exactly. Oh, 100. I mean, my brother is I think it's because we're at the 1 year anniversary and things like that. So I think there's some sort of like some struggles right now that he's going through, and he called my mom right away. And again, he's married and he talks to his wife and stuff, but he called my mom right away and said, Mom, I know you were mad that I didn't call you the first time. Right. And it's just that. It's like, it was my mom being like, yeah, I was mad. You didn't call. We could have jumped in sooner. We could have helped earlier. We could have done anything. But again, I think that goes back to like, it's really hard to ask for help. And especially with men, like if I'm having even an inkling of a shit day or needing help, I call my mom or my dad immediately, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, George, I need help with picking up the kids, this, that, driving them here, there, whatever. And my brother, I'm like, Matt, just fucking call them. Right. But I mean, that's the thing. It's like, just have the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. And for me,
and he has had so many friends rally behind him. So I have to give credit because I know a lot of those friends and they're all like, they were shocked, right? Like there's this like, never could imagine it was him. But B, then they immediately jumped in and they were there to support him.
Right.
Which is huge.
It is huge. And I'm sure he's so thankful for that. And your family is as well. And I felt the same way because no one knew the shit that I was going through except
of course
my ex and then my cousin Zach, who's like my two trusted people.
Yes.
And I am so appreciative for everything that my mom and my dad and my family and my friends and random sports fans and strangers on social media have done for me. But I still, like, to this day, I struggle sometimes with what I'm doing now because I don't have anyone to share those moments with.
Right.
And that's what always hurt my mental health is that I was alone. I always dreamed of having, the wife, the kids, the perfect family, Cincinnati dream, high school sweetheart stuff that has never happened to me. And people ask me now, like, do you regret how things have gone or like how like you had these little moments? I don't regret it at all because without that past relationship and the shit that I've been through, I would never be who I am today or what I'm doing. But I do struggle with like, it'd be really cool when I got done like interviewing Terry Crews if I had somebody to call or talk to about it. Or like whatever like big event that I'm doing, like it'd be nice to have somebody to come home to and decompress my day. I can talk to my mom or my dad or my friends, but like they all have somebody. And so I think if there's anyone listening that like is feeling alone and struggles with the same thing that I do, like that's the number one thing I still struggle with to this day. But now, because I've been at rock bottom, I have the tools and the resources to know, all right, instead of going and having, 10 beers and 10 shots and staying out till 4 a.m. at a club and covering it up, like, let's go drive around and listen to music, or let's go work out at Orange Theory. Let's just you can be mad for 10 minutes. You can be mad for a fucking hour. But like, you have the tools and resources now to realize, guess what, dude? Like, it's going to happen one day. Do I wish that I got done with this interview and there was 10 women waiting to go speed dating with me after this and like I was going to meet my wife tomorrow? Of fucking course I do. But like, that's not realistic. So you just have to.
I don't know. Now it's my new mission.
To find me a wife. You'll be my best man or best woman or whatever you want to be.
Yes.
If that's the case.
Don't give me a goal, brother. Don't give me a goal.
No, I mean, like, we can use this as like my personal Tinder, I guess.
Sure, yeah, okay.
But like, that's the number one thing I struggle with.
Yep.
And it's funny because, Taylor Swift's dating Travis Kelce now, but I remember watching her documentary from, I think it was like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
She mentioned that exact feeling of
the loneliness.
Yeah, you get off the stage in front of tens of thousands of people. You're experiencing the biggest things of your life and career, which I'm not the same as Taylor Swift, but that's what I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And you don't have anyone to call besides your mom or your best friend, or you don't have somebody to like enjoy.
Your mom's great. We're not saying she's not.
I love my mom, but
Debbie.
it's not the same.
Yep.
And so that's something that I still struggle with to this day.
Yeah. Well, and it's finding that right person who can experience it with you along the way too, right?
Yeah.
I'm just crafting your little
Yeah,
Tinder
and I'm
profile,
much more like, it's like now is meeting me is the right time, by the way. I got my life together somewhat, so that's good. But it's it is just weird how like life's changed, but that feeling has been constant throughout my entire life, but now I know how to handle it and how to tackle those moments rather than self-sabotage and drink and drown my sorrows and my depression and loneliness.
Well, now that you're in the height of what you're saying is like your biggest moments now, right? Like you've got the rock bottom, you've done that, check that off of your bucket list, right?
Woohoo.
Okay. Now we're climbing again. We're getting to this like awesome part of your life. What should we be excited about with you? Like what's coming? I mean, you've got all these great podcast guests. I don't know how you book these people. Don't tell your secrets on
I don't know
the
how
episode,
either.
but tell me later. And then, I mean, what should we be excited about with you?
Be excited that I'm here, and I say that not as like a selfishly thing, but like knowing that if you're struggling too, that you can be here and find help and get through the lowest moments, the rock bottoms of your life as well. That's why I just like to tell people that I'm a living, breathing example of being able to reach out for help and to feel better and to love yourself and to not feel alone. That's like, the answer that I want people to take away when it comes to like the material things, like the podcast. I don't know what it's going to look like. My goal is to make it the biggest mental health podcast in the world. And people think that I'm fucking crazy when I say that.
No, I love that.
But that's how I think. Everything that I've ever wanted to do in life, I've put my mind to, and I've really, pretty much, I've done it. And so that doesn't sound crazy to me. I want to host the Tonight Show one day. That was my dream and goal. I feel like I'm achieving that goal and doing it, but with my own twist and with my own purpose that really I think is true to me. So yeah, I mean, what to expect from me? I'm going to keep grinding this thing out and asking, I don't care. I'll reach out to anyone. I can get in contact, and I won't tell my secrets, but I can get in contact with literally anybody in the world.
Yeah.
I reached out to President Obama, to Steve Carell, to Terry Crews. Guess what? 1 out of 3 said yes. And I can always circle back. Those emails are there. When Taylor Swift was on her tour, I was like everyone wants to, trying to do an interview with her, trying to get in touch with her.
Sure.
She wasn't doing interviews during her tour, but now her manager, Tree, that any Swifties are obsessed with because they love everything about Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Now I have Tree's contact info because I got in contact and she got back to me and
we have Cincinnati roots with Taylor Swift too.
Do we?
Yeah.
All right. What is it?
So
or can you say it on here?
I don't know. I guess. Or I could tell you after. I don't know. But there's someone in her band from Cincinnati.
Really?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Tell me later. Is it
post podcast coffee?
Did she post a song or did she play a song with him live in Cincinnati? Okay. I know who it is then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But there's Cincinnati roots.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I mean, don't you think there's a lot to this networking thing?
There is. No, the networking thing is huge. So I'll use Terry Crews, for example. Terry Crews is somebody that I've always wanted to have on because he has a really, really powerful mental health story. And he's an emotional guy, vulnerable.
I loved that episode, by the way.
That was a dream come true conversation. And it was I don't know. I love Terry. It was amazing. Yes. And so he came on the show because there was an episode I had with Nate Burleson. He used to play in the NFL. Now he hosts CBS Mornings with Gayle King.
Okay.
And we were talking about men's mental health. And Terry commented on my Instagram randomly and said, right on, with a bunch of fire emojis. I commented back and said, would love to have you on. He didn't see that. that's fine.
Sure.
But the networking part, another guest that I had on, I knew their agent knew somebody that worked in Terry's agency. So I like put them, that old guest and this agent in a group text, said, how do we make this happen? A month later, I get on an email thread. Terry says yes. And then 3 months later, I'm in LA sitting with him just like you and I are, having that hour conversation for the podcast. But it really is the networking thing. And another thing, I love being in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Like, I one day am probably going to have to move to LA because that's just how the business works. But I want to stay in Cincinnati as long as I can because one, this is my hometown. I love it. And I love being in the community and going to Reds games and Bengals games and UC games.
We have quite a city.
Yeah, it's really underrated.
It is.
And I love it. And people here are the reason why I'm who I am today and reason why I'm really alive, if I'm being completely honest. But I also have my studio here. I can have, like Kevin Gates, I recorded an episode with an A-list rapper in Cincinnati while he was on tour. I didn't have to go to LA for it. Now, it's not like Terry, I have to go to Terry's place in LA.
Sure. I mean,
that makes sense.
Sure.
But I forget. Oh, your original question was like what I'm doing?
Yeah. Like what do we expect from you? Yeah. No, it's fine.
Literally just try to do the biggest badass mental health podcast there is and get the biggest guest. I really do think one day you're going to pop up an episode where this is on Netflix and I'm with President Obama. Like, that sounds crazy to some people.
No, it doesn't. No.
But to me, like a year ago, I had a logo, an episode with Sam Hubbard from the Bengals because him and I are good friends and he was like my test dummy. I went to his house while I was still working at the news and like did it on my off day. And I was getting ready. I was going on a flight to LA for the first time to record interviews with Kate Flannery and Ricky Williams literally a year ago today. And that's all I had. Now you look at where you're at. Is it where I want it to be? No, but like, I'm just going to keep building and grinding because my goal is really to save lives and to open up this conversation like it's never been done before. There is a big thing that I'm hoping to have details on at some point in the next month or two, but I want to host a really big, powerful mental health event in Cincinnati in the spring for May for Mental Health Awareness Month, where I'm going to bring in celebrities and athletes from around the country, but also from Cincinnati and really try to break the stigma and give people a chance to like reach out and touch an A-list celebrity or a Bengals player and have that conversation with them about right. And do something. I haven't really seen that done before at a big level. I'll shout out obviously Kroger for doing the Kroger Wellness Festival. And they had me there this year doing a couple different things. One of them was an interview with Chad Johnson about sobriety. Yeah. And so there are really amazing people that care about mental health and healthcare here in Cincinnati. But I don't think there's been something like what I'm crafting up. I can't say it on here, but it's going to be
So there used to be something called Speaking of Women's Health.
Okay.
It used to be an event held here in Cincinnati, but it was like a national organization, I'm pretty sure. But I used to go to it with my mom and a couple other like women and their daughters. And it was one of the best events. And it was just like this crazy energy, all these women together, and it was all about women's health. The entire day was all about women's health, the swag bags, all the things, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's extremely possible, and I think it's absolutely needed, 100%.
Well, thank you for saying that. That sounds like kind of the route I'm going towards with the mental health, where I'm going to have. I can't nothing's confirmed yet, so I can't give it away.
Don't talk about it. Yeah,
but I'm serious. Think big. Think like if you look at my guest list, some of those people are going to be here. And it's going to be a really cool event that I think is going to break the stigma like it hasn't been done before. And my goal is to like hopefully make it an annual event in Cincinnati and it gets bigger and better where it turns from X amount of people to a whole arena of people 1 year. That's my hope. I always dream big though. I don't even know what I'm doing the rest of the day today.
I know what I'm doing, but
yeah, you're doing a bunch more interviews with people that have their life together more than me.
No. But hey, fun fact: no one has their life together.
This is true. That's true.
Actually like if you peel away all the layers, nobody has their shit together.
Yeah, people would be surprised. Like, I mean, obviously, like the Ubering surprises people, but like I'm editing videos till like 3 a.m. sometimes.
You're kind of like, what's the Bert from Mary Poppins? Like, you know, he's carrying that like musical machine where he's doing all the instruments at once.
And I have great people that help me too. Like when like my photographer, Chris, if I can tell a funny story.
Yeah.
So Chris is amazing. He went to Mason, but he's originally from Korea. And so he moved here, I think 6-7 years ago. He's 21. I had a shoot with Bryce Vine. I just put on Instagram. I need somebody to like shoot behind the scenes. This is like 6-7 months ago. And he didn't reach out. Somebody else did. They couldn't do it, and they gave me his number. Apparently he met that person like a week before.
Wow. Okay.
And so it connected the dots. Long story short, we've been together ever since doing Ryan Shazier, Coach Taylor from the Bengals, Kay Adams. I took him to LA for a week. He's amazing. He's going to be a star in this business. But we're shooting the episode with Kevin Gates, and Chris had never been to a concert before. He had never been around weed before. And we're at a concert with one of the biggest rappers in the world. And it was awesome to watch him experience that for the first time. But it's cool because I don't even remember what we were talking about, you and I just now. But
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But what was cool is like, it's just, I never would have thought I had no idea who Chris was. I've never, really hung out with anyone Korean this much in my life and worked with them professionally. And it's been cool to kind of have two different people that are at different points of their career.
Two different worlds.
Literally, yeah. But you like connect through the creativity, and then you have really cool career moments. I mean, if you look on Instagram, he had the same outfit as Terry Crews on. Terry Crews walks in. Terry fucking loses it and laughs his ass off. And they take a picture together, literally head to toe, same outfit, completely random. But back to Kevin Gates, it's like Kevin takes the stage and we're standing backstage and people in the front row are like lighting up blunts. And I see Chris like getting video of it. I'm like, this is fucking hilarious. This is awesome. But it's so cool because you never know who you're going to connect with. And like Chris has believed in me and what I'm doing. And I'm not able yet to like pay him what I want to pay him, but one day I'm going to be able to. And I hope that, he is shooting like video of me walking on the Tonight Show as a guest or something like that.
You hear of those stories all the time.
Yeah, I don't even know what the question you told me was, but
it doesn't matter. But you hear
I hope Chris doesn't get mad at me for telling him that story. But sorry to Chris's parents who might not have known that I brought him around a bunch of weed.
You know what?
He didn't smoke any though.
No, you have to experience things. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. But you see those stories all the time. Like I love, one of my favorite like pastimes is to read books about people. To hear about their humble beginnings and then where they are now, right? And so many of those stories have somebody who was there from the very beginning, who like just believed in that person and stuck with them through all of the crap and all of the eating ramen and stealing toilet paper from their parents' house kind of times. And then now they're where they are and that person is still with them. And you kind of have to have someone like that you trust to take you to walk that journey with you, regardless of spouse or relationship or whoever your couchmate is.
Well, we all had moments in that in our life. I feel like, especially in the creative career. And for me, that's why like I saw something in him that I think Joe Daneman, who's the sports director at Fox 19, saw in me when I was 20 years old. And
someone got to take a chance, right?
He took a chance and let me like kind of help him with sports, on the weekends, and I'd watch how he did it. And like, I didn't know anything. I was a senior in college, but like that opportunity changed my life. And I'm not saying I'm changing Chris's life, but like, I think it's cool.
You exposed him to weed. You might have, who knows?
And Terry Crews.
Not
at the same time. But it's cool to be able to have, like, to remember what Joe did for me and a bunch of other people in my life and career and be able to, I don't know if pay it forward is the right word, but like
lift when you climb.
Yeah. I really think it's cool to be able to go on this journey with Chris. And this is the most I've talked about him publicly. So I hope he's fine with it. But it is
We're not
really
cutting.
Cool.
We're not cutting.
No, don't cut it. He'll cut this and post it on his Instagram. I hope he does.
Right.
And then he better show the clip of the person in the front row lighting up the blunt.
I kind of want that picture actually, so we can put it together. Okay. Final thoughts. We talked about what we can be excited about with you. What's the biggest thing you've learned? I want to go back to like more of like a marketing focus. You have this podcast. Yeah. You've started this out of nothing, out of thin air. You've grown it to where it is today. In the next like 45 seconds, what's your biggest takeaway? What's your biggest lesson?
For myself or for people or?
Just you with this marketing, with the podcast.
I'm still figuring it out. Like,
I love that.
It is.
Great answer.
To me, I'm not a business person. I'm not a marketing person. I'm a journalist. I guess I'm a podcaster now and a mental health advocate. So I've just learned that genuine content wins. And if you can get people like I do to tell their story or to help them tell their story, and you post that on, TikTok, on Instagram, it will work. Like, but it has to be genuine. Like, you
Yeah.
can tell when something's forced. For me, like, I don't know what the crazy answer is to the algorithm. Stuff that I work on for hours that I think's gonna go
Never. Yeah.
doesn't. Like,
It's never predictable.
like Terry Crews talking
Yeah.
about battling suicidal thoughts, and I haven't found it anywhere else on the internet. On TikTok has like 1,000 plays. Doesn't make sense to me. But then me, like, I don't know, me talking to entertainment reporter Kelty Knight about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift has like 100,000 views, which I love both of them.
There's
Kelty
a Taylor
and Terry.
Swift effect, but yes.
Yeah, like for me, I was like, I thought the Terry thing would go more. Now on Instagram,
Sure.
you never know.
Sure.
Terry's has done almost 750,000 views.
Yep.
And it's like, you just never know what's going to work. But telling stories, storytelling, I think, is the most powerful thing in marketing or in whatever you do. People love hearing stories.
I love it. That's perfect.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm perfect, but I'll take that.
That statement's perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to set up your Tinder for you, and I'm going to help you manage
Tinder.
that.
I'm not doing Tinder.
I don't even know how to set it up. Are you kidding me? That's the true joke.
That's amazing.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Steve, we just had Brandon Saho on the podcast. He's a huge podcaster. How did you think that went?
I thought that was excellent. And personally, as a fellow podcaster myself, just hearing the grind that he himself has to go through to make his podcast successful, it really hit me down deep. Yeah.
Got you in all the feels.
Yeah. I was like, I don't feel bad about Ubering myself.
Yeah, exactly. All those feels, all those hard work, all the hustle. But honestly, I mean, he does hustle, which
Yeah.
I loved hearing about. It's one of those stories like where, you know, we had Brandon Saho come on where he's like really ramping up in his podcast career. And I can't wait to see where he goes with the Mental Game podcast. He's been interviewing so many celebrities, A-listers. The last one that he had that I watched was with Terry Crews. Pretty incredible to hear Terry Crews open up about his mental health.
Absolutely. And it's such a great time to be alive because we as a society are finally opening up to the aspect of, hey, mental health is important and we really have to take care of ourselves. And we're removing that stigma slowly, but it is being removed over time. And I think he's really leading the charge on that. And it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I'm slightly embarrassed. He kept talking about Kevin Gates, and I have no fucking clue who that is, by the way.
I don't either.
I think you need to pull him up on the internet or something because it was laughing. I do remember seeing like a picture of him, and I was like, oh, he's wearing a really cute dress. Like, I have no idea. And he's talking about him like being a rapper and his photographer, Chris, like, being there behind the scenes, watching people smoke weed. And I was like, sounds like a good time.
We're just not hip, Jesse.
No.
We're not hip.
I'm not hip. I understand the mental health piece of everything that he's talking about. I did not know who Kevin Gates was. But yeah, I mean, very, very interesting stuff. And I wish Brandon all the success in the world. I think he has an awesome message. I love his platform, and I can't wait to see him just continue to explode and connect with so many other people, especially connecting men to mental health and getting them to open up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next time someone says, hey, be a man, I'll be like, be kind.
Yeah. Tell me to rub some dirt on it. I'm going to tell you to, I don't know.
I'm going to tell you to kick rocks.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going to say.
kick rocks.
Yeah.
And
You
then
rub dirt, you kick rocks.
And then let's go have a conversation about it and open up about our feelings.
Yeah. Jesse, let's hug.
Let's hug.
Let's hug it out.
Thanks, Steve. Oh my God, you made it this far in the podcast. You know what you get? You get this special treat of following us on our website, resolve.com. That's RESLV.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, smash that bell on YouTube, and we have a newsletter. So that's pretty cool if you want to stay connected with us all the time. Thanks for listening.